What do we want our agriculture to do for us? Do we want it to provide just calories, or do we want it to provide sustenance for generations long into the future? Do we want agriculture to be this monotonous monoculture of single crops, or do we want it to provide a buffet for not only human society, but for all the creatures that we share our planet with?
That is an excerpt from an interview with 2021 MacArthur Fellow Lisa Schulte Moore, who is a landscape ecologist implementing locally relevant approaches to build soil, improve water quality, protect biodiversity, and strengthen the resilience of row crop agriculture. She works closely with farmers to develop more sustainable systems. In this episode, we go in depth with Lisa to learn more about her work, and her exceptional creativity. Let's hear more from her interview.
So what is landscape ecology? Well, we're ecologists that study the Earth's patterns and processes and how that relates to providing ecosystem goods and services for society. The parts of nature that I am most interested in is this interplay between our natural ecosystems and our agricultural production systems. We are all dependent on agriculture because we all need to eat. The poet, activist, and farmer Wendell Berry put it this way: eating is an agricultural act. And so even if you're growing up in Manhattan or Houston, Texas, you are a part of our food and agricultural systems. And I'm working to make sure that agriculture works better not only for people, but also for the planet. The part of the agricultural puzzle that I study and the geographic region that I work in is the U.S. Corn Belt. That productive center of the U.S. that we grow a lot of corn and soybeans, and that ends up in our poultry, in our pork, in our beef. And Corn Belt agriculture is incredibly productive. I'm always amazed by an Iowa cornfield. If you walk out it in late May, it doesn't look like much. It's mostly still bare soil. You might have some small corn plants coming up. But by late July, that corn is much taller than I am. It's like 10 feet or 11 feet tall. And it's amazing that a plant can put on that much production in such a short period of time. The problems with that are that we leave the soil bare for the majority of the year, which means that our soils are prone to erosion. Because there's no living roots in that ground, we tend to lose the nutrients into our nearby waterways, causing water quality degradation. The fertilizer that boosts crop yield here in the Corn Belt runs off, ends up in our water bodies, eventually makes it to the Gulf of Mexico, where it has a negative impact on life and livelihoods there. It causes too much growth of algae. That algae consumes all the oxygen in the water column, creating conditions that there's not enough oxygen to sustain the sea life. So one of the ways that my team and I at Iowa State University have been developing to try to build soils, keep nutrients in farm fields, and also provide better habitat is by trying to take our Midwestern native ecosystem, tallgrass prairie, and integrate it in with our current dominant ecosystem, which is Corn Belt agriculture. A prairie strip is a linear strip of diverse native prairie plants integrated into crop fields to shore up some of the environmental challenges associated with our current corn and soybean production fields. Prairie, our native ecosystem, is what built the amazing soils that we have here in the Corn Belt. And it's like the antithesis of a crop field. Crop field, annual plants, highly bred for above ground productivity, only active for a part of the year, grown in monocultures, whereas a prairie is a native polyculture that has deep roots. It's active all year long, constantly across the whole growing season. It's going to be taking up carbon dioxide and bringing it down to those prairie roots and fostering an amazing amount of life below ground. And so by putting these two systems together, the idea is that we can do it all. We can have our crop productivity and we can have the other environmental benefits that society wants our working agricultural landscapes to provide. We've shown that by integrating prairie strips on the order of about 10% of a crop field, we can keep 95% more of the soil in that field. We can keep 77% more of the phosphorus, about 70% of the nitrogen. We can triple the number of pollinators using the field, and we can double the number of birds using the fields. Because of those numbers, we started having farmers come and say, hey, I think that makes sense for me and my farm. That's the kind of farm that I want. I want not only to have crops, but I also want to build my soils. I want to have clean water. I want to have biodiversity on my farms. And working very closely with farmers, we figured out how you could take this idea that we sort of proved out in an experimental framework and actually integrate it onto working farms. And I can't underscore enough how important it was for scientists and farmers to work together to try to prove this concept for deployment on commercial farms. A couple years ago, I was out on a farm with a farmer friend of mine. I was out there to take a look at his prairie strips and help him understand the plants and wildlife that he was seeing with them. And I was asking all sorts of questions about his farm operation, and we just kept coming back to this prairie strips, and I noticed that every time we started talking about his prairie strips, he would get really animated. And I said, well, Tim, you're acting like your prairie strips are your favorite part of your farm. And he said, they are! And he started telling me about how crop production, that's what he did for a living, but he had figured it all out. He knew how to grow corn and soybeans. It was just the job. Whereas when he was in his prairie strip, he talked about all the birds he was hearing, started pointing out some of the butterflies and talking about the crickets and the bees buzzing. And he said, there's something going on in this prairie strip all year long. The prairie strip is interesting to me. One of the things I've noticed with prairie strips is that it not only helps heal the farm environment, but the prairie strips kind of help heal people. We have conversations that we wouldn't about what is agriculture for? What do we want our agriculture to do for us? Do we want it to provide just calories, or do we want it to provide sustenance for generations long into the future? Do we want agriculture to be this monotonous monoculture of single crops? Or do we want it to provide a buffet for not only human society, but for all the creatures that we share our planet with? The only way we're going to solve our 21st century challenges is with creative solutions and working together to get the job done.
Lisa Schulte Moore is a Charles F. Curtis Distinguished Professor in Agricultural and Life Sciences at Iowa State University. She also serves as the co-director of the Bioeconomy Institute and is the director of the Consortium for Cultivating Human and Naturally Regenerative Enterprises. The MacArthur Fellows Program identifies and supports extraordinarily creative individuals with a track record of excellence who demonstrate the ability to impact society in significant and beneficial ways through their pioneering work. To learn more, visit us at macfound.org.